We're back on the Early Edge on CBS Sports Network, and I am joined by PropStarz and Claudia Bellofatto because we got to continue our NFL team betting profiles, and we move to the Carolina Panthers. Claudia, I'm going to start with you. Let's just start with kind of the big ticket question from a betting standpoint. 6.5 is the win total. Dave Canales-led team. We've got Bryce Young, who did look good at the tail, very good actually, at the tail end of the season. Plus 120 to the over, minus 145 to the under. I think that's right. What are we thinking here, Claudia, in terms of the 6.5 games?
It's a slight lean on the over. I just think we have to look at what Canales was, the situation, I should say, that he was put in to turn things around in his first year. And technically, he brought in 3 more wins than the year before, so we can call that an improvement. But more important to me was the fact that he made such a massive decision just a few weeks in to bench Bryce Young. And you just talked about the turnaround we saw in those last few games. He came back better, more confident. And I think that speaks a lot to the coaching style and the culture that Canales has brought to the team, which I do think means they're headed in the right direction. As far as this win total goes, I agree with the line. I think the offseason changes that they made, adding weapons to the passing game, which Sia, we chatted about the addition of T-Mac. Maybe you don't love it, but it's another option. Adam Thielen doesn't have to be your main guy. They added some more depth to the backfield. And the defense, guys, it can't be any worse. It just can't be. It was historically bad. And they spent money in the offseason. Hopefully they have better injury luck. They had some big hits there. And you look at the odds for Coach of the Year, Canales is around top 5 right there in the odds. And the market isn't always right, but I do think that's telling. I think he can only go up from here. It's a slight lean on the over for me.
It's funny you brought up Coach of the Year because I just want to give a shout out to the actual best coach, who is, of course, they never win Best Coach of the Year for some reason. But Sean McVay is plus 2,700. I think the Rams are super sneaky in the NFC. I'm going to throw that out there. But let's get back to the subject at hand. PropStarz, 6.5 is the win total. What do you like, over or under?
I'd lean over as well. I just thought they had a really strong offseason, prioritizing improving the conditions for Bryce Young. It really came on strong at the tail end of last season. The final 4 games of 7 TDs to 0 interceptions, had a QB rating of over 100 in all 4 games. There was a lot to be encouraged by. Then you go out and you improve the offensive line. You take the 8th overall pick and you land Tet McMillan, who profiles similar to a big wide receiver like Mike Evans. This allows Adam Thielen to play in his more natural role in the slot. So I think the Panthers team have a lot to be excited about. Year 2 and Dave Canales' offense as well, in a soft schedule. So I'd lean over, but I do think the number, like Claudia said, is efficient.
So let's talk about part of the reason we're leaning the over here is because of Bryce Young. So Alex, when it comes to Bryce Young, we've seen 2 different versions of Bryce Young, right? We've seen the bad, we've seen the benched, and then we've seen sort of the comeback over the tail end of last season. Do we continue to see positive steps? Do we see the Bryce Young we just saw, or do we maybe see a reversion back to maybe some middle ground where maybe he takes a step back?
I mean, there's going to be growing pains for any young quarterback. So I think we see, more good than bad when it comes to Bryce Young. But again, very encouraged by the conclusion of the season last year. And then the Panthers went out and bolstered the offensive line. And with a clean pocket, Bryce Young has looked like a viable, legitimate NFL quarterback. So a lot of it has to do with just keeping him upright, keeping the confidence high as well, having some dependable targets in the offense, which I do think has certainly improved. So I'm more bullish on him than bearish. So yeah, I think Bryce Young is headed for probably the best season of his career, but the bar is fairly low because of his previous struggles. But I do like what I saw, and I do think it continues to develop.
Claudia, I love what our team at CBS Sports has produced with this chart here, because you do see a stark contrast with how Bryce Young started and how he finished. And frankly, that should probably be the trajectory of most young quarterbacks. Like, they probably need some time to grow, and a lot of them aren't given time. But here we are, Bryce Young. Are we going to continue to see positive steps?
Yeah, and I think retaining your coach, having the same coach 2 years in a row and having, again, the additions that Alex just talked about around you is key. We talked about this guy like he was, the next coming of God when he was coming into the NFL. So I think having high expectations for any quarterback, like we did with the Caleb Williams of the world, sort of sets them up for failure. the Heisman feels so far away, but we have to remember where those awards came from for him. He had elite efficiency at Bama. He was that major threat with his legs. And yes, it's a small sample size, but in addition to those 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions, he put up 100 yards on the ground. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. He was confident. He was poised. He looked more like that Bama quarterback. And I do think a huge part of that had to do with the benching. And you are only as good as your O-line and your weapons, as Alex touched on. Not only did they invest, but they invested heavily. They have the most expensive offensive line in all of the NFL, salary-wise. And we saw them go from the worst O-line in the NFL to a top 10 unit last year. Pressure rate was down. Hits were down. Bryce Young took 29 sacks compared to 60 the year prior, and his play improved drastically overall when he was under pressure. You also take into the fact that they brought in Rico Dowdle alongside Chuba Hubbard, who looked great last year. That takes pressure off of the passing game. And going back to Canales, too, we know what he can do with quarterbacks like Geno Smith, like Baker Mayfield. We saw the resurgence of them. So I do think that fans should be excited about Bryce Young's potential, but it really comes down to the fact that the raw talent is there, and now he has the pieces around him where we can really see that potential.
Can I just tell you, this doesn't often happen, but I was kind of leaning to the under, but both of you have now sold me on the over. I'm not saying I'm definitely betting it, but I think I'm leaning over 6.5 wins here. Let's talk about the division. So the Carolina Panthers predictably plus 450 to win the division. But what's interesting, it gets a little tricky here. To finish second, they're plus 290. To finish third, they're plus 150. And then to finish fourth, it's plus 230. Claudia, any of those jump out to you?
I think it's priced correctly. The Saints have a lot of questions, quarterback being the biggest one, so I would put them last. I think the Falcons, I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, could have a shot at the division, so I'd put them ahead. Bucs have issues on defense, but they're the favorite for a reason. So I don't think there's a ton of value because I would go with the favorite here. I think the play is, if you believe in trends, is to wait a bit. They've had very slow starts. They're 2-18 to start the past 3 seasons. 4 of their 5 wins came in the last 9 games of 2024. So I think if you're looking for value in this specific market, it could be during one of their early cold streaks if you have faith in the team itself on paper to bounce back.
Fair enough. PropStarz, any of these division numbers jumping out to you?
I thought Claudia hit the nail on the head. I really, when it comes to this category, to me, it's difficult to find a lot of value because even if you do correctly handicap the Carolina Panthers, there's too many additional unknown variables that could, present them second, third, first. So I think if anything, the win total, you have more control over. And if you were looking for something more of a long shot, I'd take a look at maybe the Panthers to win the division outright. But I think it's very difficult to predict where exactly they will finish just because so many things can happen that they have no control over. So yeah, I would agree. This market, pretty efficient lines. If anything, I'd maybe sprinkle a little bit on them to win their division.
Alex, they call you PropStarz for a reason. Let's move to our favorite player prop relating to the Carolina Panthers.
We've been giving Bryce Young his flowers this whole segment, so I think his passing line is criminally low, 3,150 yards. He would need to average 187 passing yards to eclipse this over 16 games, not even 17 games. He's an NFL quarterback. I'm convinced of that by this point. I think he's a legitimate starter. Again, year 2, the continuity in the Dave Canales offense, having improved the offensive line, gotten him more reliable weapons. I think we're going to see him take that next step, but he doesn't even really have to in order to eclipse 3,150 yards. He can be pretty poor and still go over this number. So this is one of my biggest season-long positions that I have. I absolutely love Bryce Young over 3,150 passing yards.
Claudia, we go from thinking 3,150 passing yards is low to thinking 17.5 touchdowns is low.
Way too low. He had 15 last season, and he struggled early, and he got benched. He should have the reins for the full season, and he doesn't have to rely, again, not to give any shade to Adam Thielen, but he was his biggest red zone target. And now you have options, whether or not you love the T-Mac signing, whether or not you love Rico Dowdle, Xavier Legette. We saw some flashes of him last year. It's simple as protection is better. The weapons are better. The leash should be longer. The NFL systems project him for 20 right now. Some books are already up to 18.5. So if you can find 17.5 as low as minus 110 for the juice, you got to jump on it.
I got to follow up. If somebody finds 18.5, Claudia, you'd still be on the over, right?
I think so. Yeah. Too low.
Yeah.
Too low.
It does feel like it's way too low. I like both of these plays. I don't know how you all just did it. This never happens. I always kind of stand my ground. I'm sold. I'm sold on Bryce Young. I'm sold on the Carolina Panthers. I'm sold on pretty much everything you two were selling. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Alex. Really good stuff as it relates to the Carolina Panthers.